You want a free market? This is what free market is. You can't have it both ways. Hello, everybody, and welcome back. Today, we're going to talk about LNG, liquefied natural gas. It's a little bit of celebration here in Canada. We've got a new export terminal out in BC that has just sent off its first tanker full of LNG, liquefied natural gas, to the Asian market. I think a lot of you Albertans are happy about that. It's the beginning of something that should benefit. And I'll get more into that. Your province and everybody else, that from your arguments that it's good for Canada because it'll increase tax revenue, which I agree it will. But there's always sometimes you don't foresee the consequences to certain changes. It's a double-edged sword, this export terminal. And by that I mean natural gas prices here in Canada are poised to increase 60% by the end of this year. And that's just not my opinion. That's actually from an article in Financial Post. Canadian natural gas prices are poised to jump nearly 60% this year, marking the end of long discounts as new export terminal begins shipping to global markets. So in the article, they're talking about what everybody knows. Well, anybody that's familiar with business and free markets. When you have a product and you're able to deliver to a market where their prices for that product are higher than the domestic prices, it's good for the exporter, good for the company, but it's not good for the market that enjoyed the low prices. So we're going to think of it this way. I'm a farmer. I grow oranges. But I don't have a wagon to bring it to the next town. And in my town, I only have so many people that the amount of oranges that I grow, I'm left over with a few oranges, and therefore I produce more than what the town needs, the current town. And in the current town, they're dictating the price of what they want to pay for the orange, say $1 an orange. Now, I make an investment, I get a truck, and I'm able to take those oranges and deliver it to a city which has more money and a high demand for oranges because they live in a city. They don't live in the country. They can't grow anything. So in the city, they're willing to pay $1.50 an orange. As the farmer, do you think I'm going to first sell it to the local townspeople, and then whatever's left over, I'll bring that to the city and sell to them for $1.50? So the townspeople, they'll sell for $1, and then the city, I'll bring it to $1.50? No. I'm going to sell it for $1.50 going forward. So if anybody in the town wants oranges, they will have to pay $1.50. They don't want to pay the $1.50? Not a problem. Load it up in my truck and I'll ship it to the city because I'm going to get my $1.50. So now that town doesn't have any oranges, or they have oranges, but they're now going to have to pay $1.50 as opposed to $1 back in the day. Well, that's what's going on with the natural gas. We had low prices because there was no other markets. Even in the States, we would ship it to the States, but even then they would have to sell it at a discount because the cost for natural gas in the States was still relatively low because they had their own supply. So the cost to transport it, plus the final cost that they would sell it in the market, that's why they sold it at a discount. When they would sell that at a surplus. So whatever they sold to the Canadian market, anything that was left over, they sold it to the US, they sold it at a discount because there was, what else are they going to just leave it there? No, they're going to get rid of it. But now, going to the Asian markets, their prices are already high. So even with the delivery charge, even with the cost of sending it to the export terminals, to compress it, liquefy it, put it on the shipping container or the the cargo ship, bringing it to the market, unloading everything else, even with all those costs of delivery, still makes sense to sell it to those markets because their cost is already really high. So our cost for natural gas is now going to reflect that, because if we don't buy it, they already have a customer that they're going to buy it from. Now, the only benefit to where we are right now is that terminal, a new terminal, is now not going at 100% capacity, but that's not going to take long for them to reach it. And at the same time, too, they've got two more, the Cedar LNG and Wood Fiber LNG, that are going to come online in 2028. And then there was an article now just recently in Quebec. A Norwegian company is thinking about setting up an export terminal there. They've already got the infrastructure. Doesn't matter that they got no natural gas or whatever, even though Newfoundland looks like they've got some. Either way, there's an existing infrastructure that they would tap into. So whatever they bring from out in BC or Alberta to the east, they connect the terminal station to that, put it on shipping containers, and bring it to Europe. Europe has huge prices for natural gas. Cost is extraordinary. England, Italy, Spain, Germany, all those markets will take our natural gas at a premium price. Especially that they're trying to get off the natural gas that is being supplied by Russia. They don't have to deal with them anymore. So, double-edged sword, like I said before, it's great for Alberta in terms of getting their product out, but it's bad for Albertans and the rest of Canada, where our costs are going to go up. So in the Financial Post article, they're talking about 62% increase this year alone. Okay? So understand too that the 62% is not your overall bill that's going to go up. It's only the cost of the gas. So there's like three charges. There's delivery, there's cost of the gas, and then there's like service charges where they make up some excuse why they got to charge you more. It's really just the cost of the gas. So even if you take that 62% and add it to the physical cost per cubic meter of the gas, that's still a calculated 12% increase of your overall bill on average before taxes. That's a half decent increase. And then next year, it's going to go up even further. So 62% right now by the end of this year relative to the 2024 prices. And then by the end of 2026, it's going to be an increase of 152% compared to 2024 prices. That's 20% increase on your natural gas bill across Canada on average, depending on where you are, delivery costs, and everything else. I remember you guys, especially in Alberta, talking about how you hated the carbon tax. You complained about that. What do you think this is going to do? Then there's no more carbon tax. Costs are going to go up. They're not going to go down. I still think this is a good move, depending on how it's set up in the provinces. I think Quebec is situated in the best because they're going to have a new port, which are going to generate a lot of income. Yes, they'll buy natural gas from you guys, whatever, and then they're going to sell it at a premium. But their electricity costs are the lowest in Canada. So their people, the Quebecers, they don't use natural gas to heat their home or to cook. It's all heat pumps and electric stoves. It's been like that for years. So they can sell whatever they want, and the costs in their province will not go up. Ontario, yes. Manitoba, not so much because their electricity is lower. BC, it's going to be lower because they got those new dams coming online. Ontario, I wish they did better with their alternative energies like wind and solar, but they cut that out. Ford screwed up. Now, Daniel Smith destroyed that industry because she hates it, because she doesn't want people to see that it works. Because her only ace in the hole for her province is oil and gas. And when people are like that, that's all they have. They have blinders. They can't see to the alternatives and where the world is going. I digress on that. Anyways, now, what they should be doing is sell as much natural gas you can to everybody else who will take it. But they should be preparing for this because they knew this was going to happen. You don't think they knew once they opened up to other markets that the costs weren't going to go up? They're not stupids. But all they were telling everybody is it's good for the province, it's good for Canada. Yes, but it's also not good for the average person because our costs are going to go up. They left that out. So what they should have been doing is they should have been changing their grid to not rely on fossil fuels. Because even if they went to heat pumps, which they work, doesn't matter how cold it is, they work. Especially the newer ones that are modulating. Heat pump dryers are fantastic. They take a little bit longer, but they use a hell of a lot of electricity. Heat pump, hot water tanks work fantastic. Induction stoves. I just got one, and I cannot believe how well they work. It's instantaneous for heating up, and when I want to lower it, just like a gas stove. Electric stoves I had for many years. I grew up with a gas stove, so I know what the characteristics of both works. And I'm telling you, those induction stoves are fantastic. And you talk to anybody else who has one, they'll tell you the same thing. So there's ways around it where the cost of natural gas shouldn't hurt the average consumer, but we're dragging our feet in a lot of the provinces for adaptation of other things. And this idea where, if we switched over everybody to an EV, heat pumps, whatever, the grid can't handle it. Guys, we're not doing it in 24 hours. It's not like one day there's a natural gas furnace and the next day we have heat pumps everywhere. It takes time. When they used to build houses, it was a 50 amp breaker to each house. Nobody had air conditioners. Then they went to 100 amp breakers because there was more things in the house that they were using. More TVs, more lights, especially when they start going to pot lights, were horrendous in terms of energy costs. And everybody had an air conditioner. The grid didn't fail. Now a standard electrical panel in homes are going to 200 amps. Okay? The amount of electronic devices we have in everybody's home. So we adapt. Not only that, let alone, let's say no one does EVs. What about all those cloud services, those server farms? A server farm is insane when it comes to energy. Every computer is like an electric heater because they produce so much heat, especially those servers that are running nonstop for TikTok, YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, X, whatever, let alone the AIs that they're running. They're running nonstop. They're basically an electric heater. And then you have to have cooling for those places to keep from overheating. So you think about it in a room. You've got a heater going and an air conditioner going, just to maintain the temperature. Those server farms are astronomical in terms of energy costs or what they require to run. EVs aren't the problem. Those are. But they're going to adapt. They're going to put more generation to forms of generation. Now, the reason why Quebec has cheap electricity is because a lot of it is hydro dams, like 94% if I was looking correctly at the stats. They don't pay for the fuel because the water runs. But when you have a gas turbine, diesel generator, whatever, coal power plants, I don't know what the hell Alberta was talking about, getting coal companies to come and dig for coal. That's whatever. Anyways, natural gas, even though with the cost, and then that's going to go up. If you have gas turbines, the cost of the fuel goes up. Therefore, the cost of generation goes up. Wind, solar, they work. They didn't work back in the day because when the sun wasn't shining and the wind wasn't blowing and there was a demand for electricity, you had to have those standby generators, which take time to spool up, equalization, everything else. But now they have grid-tied batteries. So when the sun is shining, when the wind is blowing, they're feeding the grid, but they're also feeding those grid tie batteries. So when, even during the day, when there's a high demand and the clouds, block the sun a little bit and production goes down, or the wind happens to die down or whatever, those batteries instantaneous kick in. There's no spool up time like a standby generator. Think of it like if anybody has experience with those UPS power supplies. Like, if the power goes out in your house, it's a UPS power supply. So then when the power goes out, your computer's still running, your TV's still running. Instantaneous switchover. That's how those grid tie batteries work. And there's no maintenance on those things. You don't have any moving parts. You have like some cooling stations when the batteries are like high demand, but even then it's very rare. Where a gas standby generator has moving parts. So you have to maintain those things. So anyways, I digress on the generation. So if Alberta, Ontario screwed up, but they're just as bad, had been planning for this in terms of allowing their citizens to have other choices, so they're not just relying on fossil fuels, natural gas, we wouldn't care what the cost of natural gas would be going up because we're bringing it to a different market. Sell it, make that money to those people, but then we need a choice where our costs don't come down. Because again, guys, I don't want to hear where we should sell to us first at a discount and then whatever's left over sell to the rest of the world. Because those same guys who talk about that also hated Trudeau and called him a dictator, communism, and everything else. So what you're proposing is no different. You wanted free market? This is what free market is. You can't have it both ways. So prices are not going to come down. They're only going to go up. Even, like in the article, producers are not drilling fast enough. At the current pace of drilling and investment, the report says it could be 4 to 7 years before the Canadian producers meet demand from LNG export projects already underway. 4 to 7 years. Do you think they're going to speed it up? Do you think they have an incentive to make sure that they start producing more so that the cost comes down? No. Because investment, let's talk about even just the investments. The banks are not going to loan them the money if they see their margins start to shrink. So they're going to do no different than what OPEC has done. Shut the well off, turn it back on, shut it off, put it back on. Oh, we're going to invest, but it's going to take us a few years. We got to do our due diligence. We got to do this. They're going to take their time and they're going to drag their feet. Not going to be 4 years. They'd be lucky if it's 7 years before they meet the demand, because the demand increases their margins, increases the cost. Don't be silly if you think they're going to do something for Canada. These companies only care about one thing: profits. They're not patriots. Of course, Alberta screwed up again. But what's new? What's new for the UPC? The NDP were actually doing something back in the day before Jason Kennedy, that they were changing their electrical grid to capacity, meaning they were building that in 10 years, if they needed 100 kilojoules, that they were going to reach that 5 years before. They were always going to be ahead of the game. And they were using renewables that you don't have to pay for the fuel. So the cost would even come down further. Because if you have more supply of electricity, the cost comes down. And if you don't have to pay for the actual fuel because the sun and the wind is free, but natural gas and oil and diesel, whatever biofuels, you have to pay for. So it's a mixed bag on this for natural gas imports. Um, Depending on how we go forwards, it can get better or it can get worse for us, the average citizens, and even you Albertans that really want this. And I understand why, but your leaders are lying to you where they think this is going to be all nothing but good for you guys. And I don't want to hear about disbursements, equalizations. That means nothing because the cost of gas is only going to go up. And that has nothing to do with anything. Well, I hope everybody thinks about what I just said. Let me know in the comments what you think. If I missed something or if I'm, again, out to lunch, please like and subscribe. I appreciate it. And we'll talk later. Take care.